I want to quickly talk about something to do with the Leafs side of things. Okay.
Alrighty.
After the game, Mr. Sheldon Keefe said he was not satisfied with the way William Nylander was playing.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And naturally, I think I noticed. I think Nylander might have had a partial break, or he had a really, really good play at some point in the game, but I didn't notice him a ton in the game.
And he scored.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to point this out. Everyone like Matthews always lights up Montreal too. I always say this: Nylander is quietly like one of the biggest Habs killers in the league. I swear. Even that off year he had after signing his contract, he lit Montreal up. He always does. It's incredible. I hate it. But he talked about that with Nylander. The second line continues to be criticized, and people were talking about splitting up Marner to Matthews to get Tavares going again. And the other guy is Wayne Simmons. The reason I mentioned both of them is, listen, Nylander is a different conversation. Simmons is on a bit of a cold streak, apparently.
A little?
We know that Nick Abercrombie has just been signed, so that's pretty cool. And we know that a big part of not trading him or Matthew Knives, as they wait for him to show up, because I think he's still playing right now.
Yeah, I'll double check
it. It's going to be to test out some of that fourth line. And well, that's really it. Is how do you guys see Simmons playing lately? Because you obviously watch him more than I do.
Like he's not been great. Like that's a fact. And again, like I think that's something, that fourth line, and Wayne Simmons isn't the only guy on that line who hasn't performed. Jason Spezza hasn't been fantastic. We got healthy scratched a couple weeks ago. But again, like I wonder, these guys are older. I wonder if we're getting to that point where it's like you acquired this depth with the ability to rotate these guys in and out. You still have Kyle Clifford down in the AHL. You have Nick Robertson down in the AHL. Like it was very surprising when it happened. Kyle Clifford looked okay on that fourth line. Is it a permanent solution? I'm not sure. But, when the playoffs come around, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some rotation down there. Wayne Simmons one game. If Wayne Simmons isn't working, you have Kyle Clifford. Like they do play semi-similar games. Maybe Simmons is a little more skilled than Kyle Clifford, but I think the physicality they bring to the game will be important when it comes to playoffs. But yeah, no, Simmons has not looked great recently.
Mm-hmm. For me, I wouldn't mind if, and I'm going to use the Kawhi Leonard example again, as I always have. I don't mind. Pardon?
He's a fun guy.
Yes. I wouldn't mind load management with Spezza or Simmons. I think, first with Spezza, it is the age. It is kind of a skillful guy. He's already had a bit of a healthy scratches here and there, but I wouldn't mind that you give him a few days off, especially when you see a lot of the other guys coming back from injury. There's going to be a lot of forwards there that they're going to want minutes. And going into the playoffs, I wouldn't mind if you kind of mix things up. Same thing with Wayne Simmons. I think a big thing, and I'm going to use an example of Lou Lamoriello, when I think it happened 3 times in his career where he decided that he wanted to be the coach of the Devils because he didn't want to make a new hire when he fired the past guy. Right. And he would have all these guys just healthy scratched, and he would only use them here and there depending on the matchup, depending on what was going to happen going towards the game. And he did it both towards a push towards the end of the season and during the playoffs. So 2 examples are Jay Leach or Eric Bolton, who were guys that were, the typical heavy enforcer type guys, but he knew that he didn't always have to use that physicality. Like he was still a guy that wanted that energy sometimes from the fourth line.
Completely unrelated note. Was it not Claude Julien that he fired?
Yeah. And then it was another guy. I forgot his name. Oh, something McLean.
Doug McLean? Todd McClellan? Who's running through
John McLean?
John
No,
McLean?
No, that's Die Hard.
That's
Die Hard.
Anyway.
Okay. Something McLean.
Yeah.
I wonder if you guys remember from our last episode. Yeah, we took the week off because it tired from the deadline. I said that I thought the Blues were one of the two teams who kind of wanted more from their deadline. I realized I forgot to say who the second was. And I think it was Toronto. Not because they made the move on defense, obviously, and they tried to make the move for Sateri, and then the waivers thing happened. So that was their moving goal. And I remember listening to 32 Thoughts, and Friedman said maybe they were looking for a forward. And I would imagine the perfect scenario, that was Andrew Kopp. I wondered if they wanted to either, if the salary could work and they could hang on to Kerfoot in the same way, if they could maybe have gotten a more surefire thing for the fourth line. We know that they wanted to keep it open for Knives and Abersazy, but I wonder if they wanted to get just one more guy who was a not like a sure thing. You know what I mean? Maybe not like a super sexy, either a guy they could move down if Kopp came in, or like just another set guy. Just because I wonder about Simmons and that.
Well, I think they made that move. I thought it was part of the Giordano trade. I thought that was Blackwell.
Oh yeah, they got Colin Blackwell.
I thought that was Colin Blackwell, and
that's on me. I completely forgot they got him. Completely forgot.
No, it's fine. Because you brought up Knies and Abersazy earlier, and maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm just the ultimate skeptic. I don't know if I'm a fan of how much we're talking about, especially Matthew Knies. And I watched him play. Like I watched his first game of the Frozen Four, and like, yes, he's going to be a great player, hopefully for the Toronto Maple Leafs one day. Mm-hmm. But I think saying that they're going to sign him and you're going to put him on the second line and that's going to be your solution is a dangerous game to play. He's 19. Mm-hmm. To me, I thought the solution here is you have two options in my eyes. You have Blackwell as an option. And I saw earlier, David Alter tweeted about the lines that they're going to use tonight in about 45 minutes.
Big game.
Yeah, against Florida. First game of the year against Florida. Who scheduled this? I think the two guys you're more inclined to try on the second line rather than Matthew Knies is Colin Blackwell. Yep. And you know what? Maybe he hasn't been the most notable player so far compared to, Labushkin and Giordano, and I think the impact they've had on the back end. Yeah. But I think you give him a few more games, then you give him the chance on that second line. The second guy is Ondrej Kase. And right now he's out. And I think a lot of it's very precautionary because he's had issues with concussions and stuff in the past. Yeah. But when he does come back, I don't see why you can't put him on that second line with Tavares and Nylander or whatever combination Sheldon Keefe chooses, because if you're not playing him there, you're probably playing him on the fourth line. And I don't know if that necessarily makes sense for his skill set. I think he'd be much better utilized, in my opinion, on the second line.
I completely agree with like the whole university NCAA aspect of it when you look at depth. So I know it's not always comparable with certain players, but I'm going to think about Matt Boldy, where he comes in for the Minnesota Wild. They know he's going to burn the first year of his entry level contract, but it's not looked at. And maybe I'm just thinking because the Toronto hype sometimes in terms of prospects in the market. Mm-hmm. But for me, Matt Boldy is a good example of how you approach that. So what happens is he gets signed, but he goes to Iowa. They're patient with him. And he stays with the team, eventually gets called up, and he's one of the emergency guys that you put in as a depth player in the playoffs, where I know that's a big push, but it's something to look at as an option where you don't want to just put the guy into the top six. And he didn't play top line minutes. He didn't play second line minutes. He didn't even play third line minutes when he first came in for Minnesota.
You know what I wonder, or what I think it may be? And I'm not saying this is directly a Leafs management thing, but maybe this is an idea that sort of fan bases have started to create here. Is over the past few years, we've seen, I can think of three players in like, especially that have come in and been immediate difference makers coming out of the NCAA. I think of, I'm biased, Cole Caulfield last year and look in the playoffs. Yep. I remember when Makar and Hughes first signed, Vancouver were must watch, and we saw Colorado and McCarr. We're like, holy crap. But we got to remember the echelon of where those guys were. And this is no offense to Abersazy or Knives or even Jake Sanderson, but who we will talk about later. That's great news for Ottawa. But those are guys who came in right away and were like, we're super duper duper stars. You got to like lower your expectations for everyone, right? And I don't even think those guys came in and like the Canucks haven't been good for a couple of years. Like there were certain asterisks there. So I wonder if maybe that's why some people are having this idea of, ooh, they're getting excited. Just got to temper the expectations, right?
I actually think I'd have to double check with Abertazzi at least, but I know with Nyes, I have it up here. I think he'd be a guy who can shake things up on the fourth line. If anything, if he's going to make an NHL impact, I think at this moment, it's going to be on the fourth line. Sorry, I'm a little just getting over a cold.
No problem.
He's 6'3" and 205 pounds. This isn't Nick Robertson, right? When Nick, remember we had the discussion about Nick Robertson, and I said, he's young, he's not in his frame yet, he's still growing. Maybe he shouldn't play in the bottom six because that's a little too rough, and that's rough and tough.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense. You're not utilizing his skill. I think if you put Matthew Nyes even on the fourth line, I wouldn't mind that at all. I think he's just built in a different manner than Nick Robertson is. And I think he'd be better on the fourth line than just throwing him with John Tavares and William Nylander right now.
You could also try for either of them, Abersazy or Knives, is down the stretch. If you've got like a lead on the team, because if you look at Toronto's schedule, they can't really screw around because I think they have 2 games against Florida, 2 against Tampa, 1 or 2 against Boston and Carolina. The division could be, the seeding. I mean, it might be figured out like the last week of the season in the Atlantic. It's insane. This is because Boston has been playing exceptionally. It's insane. Like the past 30 games, it's incredible.
I like to say that I keep laughing at that picture I keep sending you guys, the STP memes, the Steve Dangle, when you try to avoid Boston when you look at the stat, like that still makes me laugh. Like there's a Star Trek edit for it. So just go back to my point. I wonder if you're up and you have a lead and you get a power play, if you just give Abersazy or Knives a chance on the second unit or something, just to see what they can do. You know what I mean?
100%.
To see if they can be an option. I think there's a few stinkers in there, like you face Columbus. I'm sure you could try and pull that off. I say that when they've humiliated Montreal and Toronto this year, but I don't care.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
Yeah.